History is filled with brutal, bloody conflicts. But imagine a war that lasted over 3 centuries without a single battle. This is not a joke. This is real history. The Netherlands and the tiny Isles of Scilly were technically at war for 335 years, all because of a paperwork problem. The chaos began in the middle of the English Civil War. The year was 1651 and was tearing itself apart. On one side, the Royalists, supporters of King Charles I. On the other, the Parliamentarians, led by Oliver Cromwell. The Royalists were losing, badly. Desperate for a safe place to regroup, they retreated to the Isles of Scilly, a remote archipelago off the southwestern coast of England. Scilly was perfect for hiding and for piracy. The Royalist Navy, cornered and desperate, began attacking Dutch ships in the English Channel. At the time, the Dutch Republic was a rising maritime power, allied with the Parliamentarians. They weren't about to let this slide. Enter Admiral Martin Tromp. Tromp sailed to Scilly with a fleet of warships and issued an ultimatum: stop attacking Dutch ships or face war. The Royalists refused, so Tromp officially declared war on the Isles of Scilly. And then, nothing happened. Why? Because within weeks, the Parliamentarians showed up, crushed the Royalists, and took control of Scilly. The problem? No one remembered to tell the Dutch. During the 17th century, the Dutch Republic was one of the world's greatest naval powers. Their economy depended heavily on trade, and Dutch ships carried goods across Europe and beyond. English waters were already dangerous due to ongoing conflicts, but the Royalist pirates hiding in Scilly were a serious problem. Dutch merchants were losing money, and the Dutch Navy was losing patience. Admiral Martin Tromp had every reason to want those Royalist raiders stopped. But the irony? He declared war just as the problem was about to solve itself. With the Royalists defeated, the Dutch had no reason to fight. They sailed away, but technically, the war was still on. No treaty was signed. No peace was declared. And so, year after year, decade after decade, century after century, Scilly and the Netherlands remained at war. For 335 years. No battles, no casualties. No one even noticed. How does a war last for centuries without anyone noticing? Part of the reason is that the Isles of Scilly are tiny and remote. Their population remained small, and the war had no real impact on daily life. As for the Dutch, their empire continued to grow, then shrink, then change completely over the centuries. The war simply got lost in the shuffle of history. Fast forward to the year 1985. A local historian named Roy Duncan started researching the Isles of Scilly's history. He stumbled upon references to an ongoing war with the Netherlands. Curious, he reached out to the Dutch embassy in London. The response? Wait, what? Turns out, no one in the Netherlands had any idea they were technically still at war. A year later, in the year 1986, the Dutch ambassador traveled to Scilly. In a formal ceremony, he signed a peace treaty, officially ending the conflict. After 335 years, the war was finally over. When the news broke, both the Dutch and the residents of Scilly found the whole thing hilarious. The mayor of Scilly joked that they had never felt particularly threatened. Meanwhile, Dutch officials saw it as a lighthearted way to close an obscure chapter of history. The peace treaty was signed with much laughter, handshakes, and the relief that finally there was no war. At least not on paper. Believe it or not, this is not the only war with an odd history. The Anglo-Zanzibar War of 1896 lasted less than an hour, the shortest war in history. The Emu War of 1932 was not even a real war. Australia sent soldiers with machine guns to fight off thousands of invading emus, and the emus won. Even the 100 Years' War between England and France lasted much longer than its name suggests. It went on for 116 years. Why is this so funny? 1. It lasted longer than almost any other war in history, without a single casualty. 2. It was all because of forgotten paperwork. 3. The only people who even knew about the war were a local historian and some confused diplomats. The war between the Netherlands and Scilly is proof that history is full of bizarre and hilarious mistakes. It also shows how easily things can be forgotten, sometimes for centuries. So next time you sign an important document, double check it. You might just avoid a 335-year-long war. If you enjoyed this strange slice of history, hit the like button. And if you love uncovering history's weirdest moments, subscribe so you never miss a story.